It was supposed to be a quiet summer morning. Brooke Wilberger was doing a simple job cleaning outdoor lamps at an apartment complex near her campus. But within minutes, she vanished without a sound, leaving behind only a single shoe. And a mystery that would haunt Oregon for years. Brooke Wilberger started her morning the way she always did, focused, calm, and willing to help. Her sister mentioned the courtyard lamps needed cleaning, so Brooke grabbed gloves, a bucket of soapy water, and stepped outside. The day was quiet. Nothing strange. Nothing threatening. She set up the small ladder, wiped the metal post, stepped back to check her progress. Neighbors later recalled seeing her ponytail move as she worked. Everything seemed normal. And then, minutes after 10 a.m., everything changed. A resident heard a soft thud. When she looked out the window, Brooke was gone. The ladder remained upright. The bucket stood beneath it. One glove lay in the grass. One running shoe rested a few feet away. Detectives reconstructed the timeline. From Brooke's last movement to her disappearance, less than 5 minutes had passed. No scream. No struggle. No tire marks. The scene was disturbingly clean, too controlled to be random. Someone had watched. Someone had waited. And someone executed the abduction with precision. Within an hour, police, volunteers, and students filled the courtyard. The Wilberger family arrived quickly. They knew instantly Brooke hadn't left on her own. Something deliberate had happened. Detectives examined the scene. Nothing knocked over, nothing scattered, nothing chaotic. It's staged, one investigator murmured. Random offenders don't operate this neatly. The search expanded rapidly. Volunteers swept fields and wooded areas. Helicopters scanned tree lines. Dogs picked up faint scents that vanished quickly, suggesting Brooke had been moved fast and far. Meanwhile, the FBI reviewed early tips. Several witnesses had noticed a slow-moving, older green minivan in the area that morning. One student said she felt watched by the same van 2 days earlier. Another said it circled her dorm parking lot. Individually, none of it proved anything. But the behavioral analyst's words did. This offender studied routines. This wasn't his first attempt. Reports of the green minivan multiplied. A jogger said the driver slowed beside her. A student said a man in such a van approached her months earlier. A bus stop commuter said the van lingered for 3 days in a row. Same model. Same faded paint. Same sliding door. Then came the first solid lead. A traffic camera caught a green van turning onto a forest access road minutes after Brooke vanished. The footage was grainy, but the timing matched too perfectly to ignore. On the ground, search teams found puzzling clues, short bursts of scent detection, then nothing. Trails that started, then died. As if Brooke had been moved or repositioned more than once. As detectives rechecked every known offender in the region, one name kept resurfacing: Joel Patrick Courtney, transient. Violent history. Recently released. A match not by chance, but by pattern. And the deeper they dug, the clearer it became. Someone like Courtney didn't improvise. He hunted. Courtney's background raised every red flag. He drifted between states, never stayed in one job long, and always seemed to appear near campuses where women reported unsettling encounters. Former co-workers mentioned eerie behavior, cleaning his van late at night, showing up with unexplained scratches, leaving jobs abruptly. When detectives brought him in, he lied immediately. First he said he was asleep. Then he said he went for a drive. Then he claimed he wasn't near the apartments at all. But phone data placed him right there minutes before Brooke vanished. A search warrant for his van only strengthened the case. Bleach stains on the carpet. Missing floor mats. Upholstery scrubbed aggressively. Blonde hair caught in a seat hinge. Fibers matching Brooke's clothing trapped beneath a panel. Courtney grew restless during questioning. He avoided eye contact, trembled, kept glancing at the map on the wall. Then a detective asked quietly, "Why did you move her twice?" Courtney froze. And that silence told investigators they were closing in. The investigation widened when detectives connected an attempted abduction in New Mexico to Courtney. The survivor described the same behavior Brooke's attacker likely used: a rapid grab, silent force, a sudden retreat when interrupted. Her description matched Courtney almost exactly. Detectives flew out to re-interview her. Her account reinforced everything: they were dealing with someone who had practiced, failed, and refined his method long before Brooke. Back in Oregon, Courtney's story continued unraveling. He contradicted himself with every sentence. He couldn't explain his phone movements, the bleach, the hair, or the missing mats. Under pressure, he finally cracked. "I grabbed her. I didn't know what to do." Not a confession, but the first fracture. When asked where he took Brooke, his directions were scattered and inconsistent. But amid the chaos, one detail repeated: a remote logging road with metal gates. Search teams shifted immediately. They didn't yet know it, but they were heading toward the final truth. Search teams pushed deeper into the Oregon Coast Range, moving through steep ridges and thick brush. The terrain was brutal, but volunteers didn't slow down. Dogs picked up short bursts of scent, brief, inconsistent, almost as if Brooke had been moved multiple times. That detail matched Courtney's panicked behavior during interrogation. His statements kept shifting: near the creek, past the gate, not far from the road. Yet one landmark surfaced repeatedly: a narrow logging road with a sharp bend and an old metal gate. When detectives overlaid his contradictions with topographical maps, the location became unmistakable. On the ground, teams found their first tangible signs: a pale fabric scrap snagged on a branch and a single boot print consistent with Courtney's size. Nothing definitive, but enough to tighten the search radius. For the first time, investigators felt the forest beginning to answer back. Momentum grew when a retired forest ranger came forward. He recalled seeing an older green minivan idling near a service gate the morning Brooke disappeared. The driver kept checking the mirrors, hands tense on the wheel. At the time, the ranger thought the man was lost, but after hearing about Brooke, the memory felt different. Investigators compared the sighting with Courtney's phone pings. The data matched perfectly. Search teams immediately shifted toward the surrounding slopes. Dogs alerted on a steep mossy incline, pulling hard toward a narrow crevice beneath a fallen log. The scent was strong but not conclusive. Inside the interrogation room, Courtney began cracking. When confronted with the ranger's statement, he stuttered, changed his story again, then muttered, "I didn't go that far," followed by, "She wasn't in the woods," and later, "I moved too fast." Every contradiction unintentionally narrowed the map. The forest was giving clues. Courtney was giving the rest. Detectives switched strategy. Instead of demanding details, they started feeding Courtney slightly incorrect ones and let him correct them in panic. "You drove north." "No, not north." "You stayed on the main road." "No, I turned earlier." "You stopped once." "No, twice." Piece by piece, through denial, he sketched the route himself. Meanwhile, search teams advanced deeper into the timberland triangle. A disturbed patch of soil, a discarded bottle, a partial tire track with the same tread as Courtney's van, small clues, but all pointing toward recent human activity. The Wilberger family followed each update with equal parts hope and dread. They wanted truth, even if painful. And late that afternoon, dog teams found something significant: a shallow ground depression covered with freshly disturbed pine needles. Search leaders froze the area. Forensic archaeologists were called in. Investigators knew they were close. The excavation of the depression was slow and precise. Forensic brushes removed layers of soil until the shape beneath became clear, an empty cavity. No remains. No personal items. Just earth that had undeniably been disturbed. At first, the emptiness felt crushing. But then the truth became obvious: the depression was shaped as if a body had once been there. And later moved. Exactly what Courtney's contradictions had implied. Search teams pivoted immediately. Instead of looking for a single site, they began searching for a second one, the permanent location. Dogs picked up a stronger scent trail leading downhill from a ridge. Handlers followed through tangled brush and loose rock. Courtney's interrogation resumed. When detectives mentioned the empty depression, he froze. His gaze locked onto a specific point on the map, a ridge deeper in the forest. Detectives didn't press him. They didn't need to. Hours later, near dusk, a dog team reached a cluster of stones at the base of the slope. And there, the dogs alerted again, this time with certainty. At sunrise, specialists began excavating the second site. The soil here was denser, compacted in a way that suggested a hurried but final burial. Within minutes, tools brushed against fabric. Then more. Subtle contours beneath the earth began forming a shape. The search was over. The remains aligned with Brooke's timeline, with Courtney's movements, with the ranger's sighting, and with every clue the forest had reluctantly surrendered. Detectives stood in solemn silence. They had brought her home. They notified the Wilberger family personally. Brooke's mother cried quietly. Her father whispered, "Thank you for not giving up." Officers had no words, some didn't trust their voices. Back at the station, detectives confronted Courtney one final time. He offered no new lies, no explanations, no resistance. He simply dropped his gaze. The case had shifted from a desperate search to the pursuit of justice. After Brooke was found, investigators shifted from searching to reconstructing every minute of the case. They retraced Courtney's movements, matched fuel receipts, analyzed tower pings, and rechecked witness statements. A pattern became undeniable. Courtney had circled the apartment complex multiple times that morning, each pass slower and more deliberate. Looking further back, witnesses reported a man in a green van parked in student areas late at night, engine off, lights off, watching. At the time, no one connected the dots. Now it formed a clear picture: Brooke wasn't chosen randomly. She had been observed. The Wilberger family met with detectives in private. They wanted honesty, even when it hurt. One moment stayed with investigators forever: Brooke's mother, through tears, saying, "You brought her home. That's all we prayed for." Forensics continued examining Courtney's van. Even after heavy cleaning, microscopic fibers, soil particles, and hair consistent with Brooke's clothing remained. Nothing dramatic, just precise, irrefutable evidence. The conclusion was unavoidable: Brooke had been targeted long before that morning. Investigators now focused on Courtney's history beyond Oregon. His movements spanned several states, each with unresolved reports of suspicious behavior. A task force pulled records from New Mexico, Arizona, Washington, and California. The pattern was chilling. The breakthrough came from a storage unit rented under a false name. Inside were personal items clearly belonging to women: hair ties, jewelry pieces, scraps of clothing, maps of college campuses with certain areas circled. None belonged to Brooke. But the most disturbing find was a notebook, a log of attempts. Dates, locations, vague descriptions like yellow jacket, alone, late, and the repeated word, wait.
This wasn't a diary. It was preparation. Brooke's date was written too. Underlined. Beside it, one word, done. Detectives spared Brooke's family the darkest details. They didn't need further pain. But for investigators, the notebook proved what they feared: Courtney had hunted before. Many times. As the task force traced Courtney's earlier years, the pattern deepened. His jobs, forestry, maintenance, temporary labor, placed him in isolated areas near young women walking alone. Perfect conditions for a predator who watched routines and waited for opportunity. Old reports resurfaced: women followed at night, a man staring into windows, a van shadowing runners on wooded trails. Incidents once dismissed as misunderstandings now fit into a larger mosaic. One case stood out: a college student approached late at night by a man urging her into his van. She refused. Friends arrived. The van sped away. Police wrote it up as harassment. Now it was clearly a failed attempt. The FBI Behavioral Unit estimated Courtney likely made a dozen or more such attempts over the years. Brooke was not his first target; she was the one whose case aligned with a community that refused to quit. Corvallis responded with safety escorts, awareness programs, and nightly group walks. Brooke's name appeared everywhere, on bracelets, ribbons, posters. The town refused to let her story fade. Courtney's trial was somber, not sensational. The courtroom filled with people who had searched for Brooke or supported the family. Her parents sat in the front row. Detectives filled the benches behind them. The prosecution laid out an airtight case: DNA traces, van forensics, phone data, tire impressions, the ranger's sighting, and Courtney's own contradictions. One by one, the pieces formed a unified narrative. The New Mexico survivor testified via video. Her voice shook, but her story was unwavering. Same stare. Same sudden attack. Same silence. Her testimony connected states, crimes, and patterns. Courtney showed no emotion, just a tightening jaw when the evidence stacked too high. Brooke's mother's testimony was the emotional center of the trial. She spoke softly about Brooke's reliability, kindness, and future. No anger. Only grace. The courtroom was silent. The jury deliberated only a few hours. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Sentence: life without parole. The chapter finally closed. Months after the trial, Corvallis focused on rebuilding and improving safety. New alert systems were created. Search procedures were updated. Student groups organized late-night escorts. Each improvement honored Brooke. The Wilbergers established a scholarship in her name, supporting students interested in community service, social work, and forensic science. Dozens applied. One wrote, "Your daughter changed how we look out for each other." Another, "Her story made me want to help." Detectives who worked the case admitted they were forever changed. They became faster to mobilize, quicker to trust instincts, more willing to treat missing person calls urgently. Brooke's case taught them that early action saves lives. A memorial bench was placed near the courtyard where she was last seen. Simple. Quiet. Engraved with the words, "She was found because they never stopped looking." People visited constantly, some to pray, some to sit, some to leave flowers, some to simply remember. Brooke's story was not defined by the darkness of what happened, but by the light of those who refused to stop searching. With the case formally closed, investigators expanded their focus to the wider implications. Courtney's arrest triggered a multi-state review of disappearances and attempted abductions. What emerged was a disturbing timeline of years spent drifting through states where women had reported encounters with a man matching his description. The task force mapped every location he had lived or worked.
logging crews, road maintenance, temporary labor, jobs that kept him transient in near isolated areas. Patterns appeared quickly: a woman who vanished after a late shift in Washington, a jogger followed in Arizona, students watched near parking garages in California. Nothing conclusive, but unmistakably similar. A retired detective from New Mexico came forward with a case he'd never solved: another woman who had complained about a man in a green van shortly before she disappeared. At the time, there were no suspects. Now, for the first time, her family had a possible answer. Meanwhile, the Wilbergers strengthened their foundation, funding early alert systems and volunteer training. Their quiet determination reshaped how departments approached missing persons reports. And investigators realized something essential: vigilance wasn't fear. It was prevention. Digital forensics delivered the next breakthrough. Analysts recovered fragments of Courtney's search history, planning notes disguised as casual browsing. Queries like campus blind spots at night, best times students walk alone, how long before someone notices, and remote turnout Oregon. They weren't random searches. They were reconnaissance. Timestamps matched his travel patterns across multiple states. Each unsolved report from years past lined up with one of his trips. He had been practicing, failing, adjusting. One deleted note stood out: Tuesday, lamp cleaning? Brooke disappeared on a Tuesday. She regularly cleaned outdoor lamps. He hadn't chosen her by chance, he tracked her routine. Corvallis responded with change, not fear. Escort programs expanded. Lighting improved. Students formed community watch groups. The university launched its largest ever safety overhaul. Then investigators found an unsent email draft on Courtney's device. 3 words, not the first. The phrase triggered a deeper review. Detectives reopened old case files from towns Courtney had lived in before Oregon. One involved a student at a Washington community college who said a man tried to coax her into his van under the pretense of helping with groceries. She refused. He persisted. Only the arrival of another student scared him off. Another report from Arizona described a woman hearing her apartment door handle move at night. When she looked out the peephole, she saw a man who resembled Courtney walking back to a parked van. That case had been dismissed at the time. Now, they all aligned. The FBI profilers summarized it perfectly: predators like him escalate slowly. Brooke wasn't his beginning. She was the moment he felt unstoppable. Meanwhile, the Wilberger Foundation expanded statewide. They developed training materials, improved search coordination, and gave rural departments tools they had never had before. Brooke's story became part of safety briefings, college orientations, and officer training. Her case wasn't just solved, it was changing systems. 1 year after Brooke was found, the community gathered under tall pines for a memorial unlike any other. Hundreds arrived: students, officers, families, volunteers, and strangers who had followed the story. The mood wasn't heavy. It was reverent. Notes lined the pathway to the memorial bench: "You made us safer. We remember you. Thank you for hope." These weren't cliches, they were reflections of real change. Detectives who had searched the forest stood together. Many quietly wiped their eyes. For several, Brooke's case remained the most emotionally demanding investigation of their careers. "She became everyone's daughter," one said. Brooke's siblings thanked the community. Her father, voice trembling, said, "She was found because people here refused to rest." As lanterns were distributed and lit, the amphitheater glowed with thousands of tiny lights. When raised into the air, the effect was breathtaking: warm, steady, symbolic. Brooke's memory had become something larger than tragedy. It had become a guide. Months later, the task force released its final report, hundreds of pages outlining mistakes, lessons,
and the coordinated response that ultimately solved the case. It didn't assign blame. It offered a blueprint. For the Wilbergers, the report was painful yet validating. Painful because of its scope. Validating because it confirmed that the community's relentless efforts stopped a predator who might have continued for years unchecked. Corvallis kept improving. Emergency stations were added across campus. Patrols expanded. Students learned to report suspicious behavior immediately. Classes invited detectives to speak about urgency and collaboration. Brooke's story became a teaching tool across the state. Her legacy lived not only in policy, but in people. In safer campuses. In quicker searches. In communities refusing to ignore early warning signs. The lantern sculpture near campus became a quiet landmark, a place where students paused, where visitors asked questions, where families reflected. Brooke Wilberger's story had begun quietly. But ended illuminating an entire community. As seasons passed, Corvallis settled into a calmer rhythm. New students arrived, many unaware of the details, yet instinctively respectful when passing the lantern sculpture or memorial bench. The case had become part of the town's identity, told quietly, remembered deeply. In the police department, Brooke's case file was placed permanently in a training room. New recruits studied it closely. Veteran officers emphasized urgency, communication, and human impact. "This isn't just a case," one detective said. "This is someone's child." Meanwhile, the Wilberger Foundation grew stronger. They provided grants for rural departments, trained volunteers, and offered support to families of the missing. Their work was humble but transformative. Small reminders appeared everywhere, flyers encouraging students to walk in pairs, new emergency beacons, cafes offering free late-night drinks to study groups. Each change, big or small, traced back to Brooke. When a documentary crew requested an interview, the Wilbergers declined. Her story wasn't entertainment. It was memory. Love. Loss. And a community forever changed. The Oregon Coast Range, once associated with fear, slowly returned to normal life. Families hiked the same ridges search teams once combed. Students visited the trails on weekends. But for those who had been part of the search, returning felt different, like revisiting a moment frozen in time. Detectives sometimes walked those paths again, not to investigate, but to reflect. They remembered the long nights, the rain, the silence before the discovery. For many, Brooke's case had become a quiet turning point. The Wilberger family visited as well, leaving flowers but taking nothing. They didn't see the forest as a place of horror, but as the place that finally brought their daughter home. Their foundation funded a search and rescue training site nearby. Volunteers practiced grid sweeps, evidence marking, and communication drills, skills that could save future lives. Many said they joined because of Brooke. And still, the most powerful community moment was yet to come. On the second anniversary of Brooke's disappearance, the university hosted a gathering unlike any other. Not a vigil. Not exactly a memorial. Something in between, a tribute to everyone who had searched, supported, prayed, or simply refused to look away. Hundreds filled the outdoor amphitheater. Soft lights glowed. People listened as speakers shared stories from the search, strangers forming lines in the rain, businesses donating supplies, officers working through exhaustion, hikers navigating dangerous terrain. Each story illustrated the same message: unity. Brooke's siblings spoke. Her father recalled her kindness, reliability, and plans for the future. His voice cracked, but he finished. Then volunteers handed out small lanterns. When lit, thousands of warm lights shimmered across the amphitheater, turning the night into a soft sea of gold. The lanterns weren't symbols of grief, they were symbols of guidance. In that moment, everyone understood, Brooke's legacy had grown far beyond the tragedy. In the months after the gathering, Corvallis deepened its commitment to safety. Rideshare boards appeared for late-night travel.
Patrol groups gained training in funding.
Businesses adjusted hours to support students working at night. The town wasn't scared, it was prepared. Brooke's name quietly shaped policy across the region.
Her case appeared in university safety protocols, search manuals, and community awareness programs.
Officers studied it during training. Student leaders referenced it when organizing night escorts. Detectives traveled statewide to share lessons from the investigation.
You will face cases that test you, they said. Fight for them the way this community fought for Brooke. Meanwhile, the Wilbergers expanded their foundation even further. They launched awareness workshops for young women, support programs for families, and resources for small police departments. One police chief summarized it perfectly: because of Brooke, we search faster.
We search smarter. And we never assumed someone just wandered off.
Her legacy had shifted from memory to movement. Years later, Brooke's presence remained woven into Corvallis. Students who had never met her still paused at the lantern sculpture.
Officers fresh from the academy still studied her case.
Families walking through the courtyard still softened their voices near the memorial bench.
It wasn't a place of sadness, it was sacred ground shaped by love and unity.
The Wilbergers continued their scholarship program. Recipients often wrote letters describing how Brooke's story inspired them to pursue careers in social work, forensic science, or emergency response.
Her light guided my path, one wrote. Detectives eventually retired, but they carried Brooke's memory with them. Some volunteered on search teams.
Some mentored new officers. All said the same thing: Brooke changed how they worked and who they became. Every spring, a small group gathered quietly at the courtyard.
No speeches. No cameras. Just reflection. Flowers placed gently. A name whispered. A memory honored.
Her story began in silence. But it ended in connection, resilience, and a community that refused to forget. Brooke Wilberger's legacy was never defined by how she was taken, but by how fiercely she was brought home.